Hello, Tech fans, and welcome into a special edition of the Tech Sideline Podcast, episode 115, originating from TSL's high-tech studios in the Virginia Tech Corporate Research Center. Whether you're watching live on Facebook, whether you're watching archived on YouTube, listening on Apple Podcasts or SoundCloud, however you consume the Tech Sideline Podcast, we're so glad you could join us today as we record on Wednesday morning, February the 5th. Again, it's a special edition of the Tech Sideline Podcast. We've got Malcolm Stewart, we've got our founder and general manager, Will Stewart, and our special guest today, Virginia Tech head wrestling coach, Tony Robie. Coach, thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on. How you doing?
We're doing well. This is a special edition. We had you on in the fall, and Will, I know we've been looking forward to having Coach on for the last couple months. This is great.
So you know what else is special about this? I just realized this. It's the 115th episode, and I was in the 115th graduating class from Virginia Tech.
Wow.
And so there's a cool story, class ring. I don't know. So on the side of my class ring, they design individual rings for each class, and Roman numerals for 115 is CXV. So they just added a T. So there's a little thing on the side of our class rings that says CXVT. So I think that's a cool feature. But I just realized that 1872 to 1987.
You helped me realize I need to order my class ring. I need to take care of that.
Yeah, I'm busy paying for Malcolm's right now. So
there you have it. Well, again, we've got Coach Tony Robie joining us here. We're going to be talking all about Hokies wrestling, recapping the season, talking about Makai Lewis and Ty Walls. We've got some questions at the end. We've got a great podcast planned. Again, we're so glad you're here, Coach. A reminder that this week and every week, the Fisher Law Firm is Virginia's trusted DUI and traffic defense firm dedicated to defending individuals charged with traffic-related offenses. From their office in Blacksburg, they are able to serve the entire Commonwealth of Virginia. Whether you are charged with driving under the influence or speeding, the Fisher Law Firm realizes that each case is important to the client. To date, the firm has defended more than 30,000 people charged with a moving violation. For a free consultation, call anytime, day or evening, toll free at 1-800-680-7031. Again, that's 1-800-680-7031. Or you can email them at info@fisherlegal.com. Again, the Fisher Law Firm, proud partners and sponsors of the Tech Sideline Podcast. All right, worth mentioning here as we get going, I feel bad I'm not wearing my Southeast Regional Training Center gear. You've got the great vest on. Will's got the shirt on. That is a great look. Did
Coach Robie give you anything yet? Do you have anything?
I need to buy one. That's the thing. I need to buy one. So
we'll hook you up.
Okay, yeah, I'll wear it proudly. I mean, it's a great vest you got there.
As long as you can read an ad for us just like you read that one. That was pretty impressive.
Oh, see, I
actually stumbled over my words, but I wasn't too happy with it. But.
So the Southeast Regional Training Center is a Tech Sideline sponsor. So we need to pimp them during the podcast. And so Tech Sideline actually donates to the Southeast Regional Training Center. So that's where my T-shirt comes from.
I love the logo on that, Coach. That's a really cool logo with the state of Virginia there.
It's a cool shirt, and it fits really well, too.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Coach, let's go ahead and dive right into it. We've got a lot to discuss. We'll kind of recap the season. We're going to talk about some wrestlers, but let's lead off with your two wins over the weekend. Always nice when you knock off the University of Virginia, as you guys did in Charlottesville. You go on the road to Old Dominion. How was your team able to bounce back the way they did this weekend following the loss to North Carolina?
Well, obviously, it was important for us. I think, North Carolina was incredibly disappointing. We, anybody who witnessed that or was there, saw it on national television, unfortunately, knows how disappointing it was and how poorly we performed. So it was important for us to come back and to compete well. And I felt like for the most part, we competed well. I would say at UVA and Charlottesville, I would say with the exception of heavyweight, I really liked the way our guys wrestled. Even in some places where we didn't come out with victories, I felt like our guys competed hard. They did a good job. 25 maybe was a little disappointing there as well. But overall, thought our guys did a good job, and we knew going into that match that it was going to be hard fought. I mean, UVA's got an improved team this year. So, really every dual meet we wrestle, our margin for error is very, very small. So, we had some guys that really stepped up. Cody Hughes stepped up all weekend for us, especially Friday night in Charlottesville. Bryce Andonian had a good win. BC LaPrade had a good win. David McFadden got back to his winning ways and looked a lot more like himself. So I was pleased with the way we competed there. And then, to come back and compete again on Sunday. And that's, sometimes that's a difficult thing to do is to go two two weigh-ins in one weekend on a Friday and a Sunday. We're on the road. Old Dominion's home all weekend, getting ready for us, preparing for us. So, whenever you go and you wrestle a school like Old Dominion, somebody who's in state, you're going to get their best punch.
Sure.
And we definitely got their best punch, and they came out and they wrestled well, and they were very, very prepared for that match. And, they kind of picked up a couple W's on the first half of the dual meet that could have possibly went either way. But I felt like our guys did a really good job rebounding and wrestled well from 65 to heavyweights. So, overall, pleased with how we competed over the weekend. And, it's back to work this week and preparing for Duke and the rest of the season.
So tell me about the crowd at Charlottesville. I couldn't get it looked to me, so I watched it. I think it streamed out over ACC Network Extra, and it looked like a good-sized crowd, but I couldn't get a feel for how many people were there and what the split was between Tech and UVA fans. What did you think? Or do you even notice that kind of stuff?
No, we definitely do. Yeah. It was so they had a great setup. They just used a small part of the John Paul Jones Arena, and they drew a curtain across. So I think the official attendance I looked was about 1,800 people, but it felt like there was a lot more than 1,800 people there. I would say, probably half the fans, or at least close to half the fans, were Virginia Tech fans. Yeah. So, we had a great showing there, and at Old Dominion as well. I mean, both of those crowds were probably the best of the year for UVA, and definitely I would say at Old Dominion as well. And there was several Virginia Tech fans in the house. So something we greatly appreciate every time that we wrestle in this region. Even when we go to North Carolina, we have a great fan base, and we're represented well in those venues.
Do you feel like when you go on the road, do you feel like in a place like Charlottesville, the faces you see in the Tech crowd, are they people that travel with you everywhere, or do you feel like there are people who are local who are coming out?
I recognize a lot of the faces.
Yeah,
definitely. There's a lot of people that I know personally that contribute to our program in some form or fashion. Obviously, this year we have 5 or 6 Virginia guys in our lineup. Yeah. So a lot of those guys are from Central Virginia, Northern Virginia area, so a lot of their families and their supporters. BC LaPrad's always a fan favorite, and he's from New Kent near Williamsburg, so he had a big contingent of fans and family that were in attendance at both of those meets. So yeah, but it's always great to see the VT fans travel with us, and I think it's similar for a lot of sports. I mean, we've got a loyal fan base, and we appreciate their support, and they're always coming out to support our guys, so it's pretty cool thing. Yeah.
Coach, coming off this weekend again, you mentioned David McFadden. I want to talk a little bit about him. Coming off that loss to Monday against North Carolina, how was he able to bounce back the way that he did? What about his week of preparation really stood out to you, and how did you feel he bounced back this weekend?
Well, I think Dave's, and this is what I told him after that, one of his best qualities, and he's been like this since he was a freshman, is he can turn the page pretty fast. And I don't know that we'll ever quite know what happened against UNC and against Monday, and obviously his performance there was completely uncharacteristic of who David McFadden is and the wrestler that he is, but it happened, and there's nothing we could do about it at that point, and the message that David was, we just have to move forward. The good thing is you're going to get another opportunity to see this guy likely at the ACC championships. There's a pretty good chance. So we have to get back to doing what we're doing right, and or what he needs to do correctly to have success on the wrestling mat. And I think maybe he let a couple things get away from him that week, and I think it showed up a little bit. So Dave turns the page quick, and he's a very, very positive guy. So he's had so much success in his career. I don't think it's a hard sell for him to understand how good he is, and to make sure his confidence is in a good place. So he did an excellent job against a formidable guy with
Cam Coy
at UVA.
Yeah, and last wrestler I want to point out from this weekend before we move on, you brought him up, and somebody that I love to talk about on the broadcast is a guy like Cody Hughes at 174. I just think a great story, someone who's kind of worked his way up. He's a fifth-year senior, I believe, right? Redshirt senior.
Right. And
my favorite stat on him, he's got the most wins all time in the state of Maine in high school. I think that's a really cool stat. But he had 2 wins this weekend, UVA and ODU. How has he come along this season and been able to contribute at 174, in your opinion?
Well, first off, the win against UVA ended up being huge. And he had to work really, really hard. And for Cody right now, he doesn't put up a ton of points. He's not a guy that can go out and score 4 or 5 takedowns in a match. So he's got to find a way to manufacture some wins, and that's a lot of the times that's just on being gritty and tough and figuring out ways to win matches. And there was a couple situations in that match Friday night where Cody was very, very close to being scored on, almost gave up a couple takedowns, and really just through his fight and his effort was able to fight through those positions and come out neutral, and then worked really hard in the third period to ride his opponent out and get the 2-0 victory. So, that win, and I tell Cody this a lot, is a lot of the way that he's going to have to win matches this year is just on being gritty and being tough and being stingy and, figuring out how to win those tough 50-50 positions where a lot of times it's just about effort and your will to win. So he came through big for us, Friday night, and then again on Sunday at Old Dominion.
Yeah, where Vic Marcelli of UVA, that 2-0 score, 100% right in that in the final team score, how important that was. We're going to talk a lot more about wrestlers as we kind of continue on the podcast today, kind of get coaches' thoughts. But one thing I want to do for our viewers that are watching now, I kind of want to take a step back, if you don't mind, and kind of reflect upon this season as a whole and spend a little bit of time on the non-conference slate, just opening up the season with Missouri and Northwestern. We'll get to Ohio State in a moment, but this team accomplished a lot in the early part of the season to start things off. Just your overall assessment of the season right now and the way that you guys started off your 2019 part of the season.
Well, obviously, I felt like we wrestled well early on. We knew looking at the schedule and how it was laid out. Number one, we knew we had a really tough schedule, and there wasn't a lot of easy matches for us. So going into November, we felt like we had to be ready, and we definitely, I think, looking back on it, we're well prepared that time of year, and we're able to get 3 really good wins. I mean, I think looking back on it, Northwestern is a win that they have a very good team. They're not healthy. They haven't been healthy the whole season, but they were healthy against us. And when they have all their guys in there, they're a very, very formidable team. So, we were able to get that W, and we split 5-5 with them, but on the strength of some bonus points by Mitch Moore, we're able to win that match. And then obviously going up to Ohio State and knocking them off was huge. And that's probably the match where we, for whatever reason, we wrestled our best. And I don't know, if it was because we were the underdog, if people weren't giving us a lot of credit at that particular point in the season. But I felt like our guys went in there with a chip on their shoulder, felt like they had something to prove, and competed as well as we've competed all year long. And really, when I look at that performance, we had 10 guys that competed really, really well. Since that point in a lot of our dual meets, I can't say that we've had all 10 guys firing, at their optimum. So for us, that's what we need to get back to. We need to get all 10 guys. And if we can get all 10 guys wrestling to the best of their ability, I think we can do some great things and we can finish this season out really strong. But those are the kind of efforts that we're going to need, especially in 2 weeks at NC State and then the last weekend of the season at Pittsburgh.
So, Coach, let me ask you a question about that trip to Ohio State. Was that the first time you'd seen their facility that they wrestle in now?
It is, yes.
If I remember, it's a combination wrestling, volleyball, and
Correct.
Something else they do.
That's just wrestling and volleyball.
Yeah, I thought it was really neat. What did you think of it? It's smaller. It looked more intimate to me than something like a Coliseum setting. Give me your thoughts on that.
It's fantastic. I mean, it's one of the nicer, maybe the nicest wrestling venue that I've seen. They've got a practice facility that's, it's all in one building. So they practice there, coaches' offices, lounge, locker room, everything that you can possibly imagine. Their wrestling room is 80 yards long. It's 6 wrestling mats. It's about, almost 3 times the size of what we have at Virginia Tech. Yeah. And to be quite honest, the competition arena, in my opinion, is the nicest part of that venue. It seats about 5,000 people. They do a really, really good job with it. You wrestle on a raised platform, so they have all kinds of seating on the floor. Fans are right on top of you. It was, in my opinion, it rivals Rec Hall, in Carver Hawkeye Arena. Carver Hawkeye has 16,000 people, so it's a little bit different. But I've coached in all those places, and what Ohio State has right now is really comparable to almost anything in the country, especially when you have it on a little smaller scale. If you're not going to put 10, 12,000 people in there routinely, a 5,000-6,000 seat arena is really ideal.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty neat.
Yeah, no, it was really awesome to watch that. And let's spend a little bit of time about Ohio State because, I mean, like you said, everybody was wrestling so well, and I've got the box score here in front of me. I mean, guys like Colin Girardi with a decisive win in that one, and Joey Prada the upset win at 125, and Cody Hughes a victory. It just it was such a thrilling duel to watch.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And I take that back. We had one guy that didn't wrestle well. That was Dave McFadden. So when you go into those dual meets, it's something, there's a lot of things that are unexpected that happen. I mean, I would have never guessed that Dave would have lost and that we would have won that as a team. But we had a lot of guys step up, and that's really what you need. And if you look at a lot of these dual meets, a lot of the matches are toss-up matches or swing matches are oftentimes decided by 1 point, one takedown, one situation. So if you can come out on the favorable end in a lot of those matches, it's obviously you're going to come out on top as a team, and that's what we didn't do at UNC. Is there was several what I would consider toss-up matches, and they all for the most part went in favor of UNC, and that's kind of what happens. So that's what happened at Ohio State. We were able to win a bunch of close matches and win that as a team. It was a lot of fun, but like I said at the time, it's wrestling season's a long season. And what you do in November and what you do early in the season is it's great, and it's something to build on, and it's fun, and it's great for our fans and the program. But at the end of the day, we want to be wrestling our best at the end of the year, and that's what we need to try to accomplish.
Sure.
So what was the score of the UVA meet? Was that 20-16? Yes. Is that correct? So you talk about those little moments that make a difference. You were talking about Cody Hughes earlier, winning 2-0. And I remember watching that, and you were talking about where things got dicey for him a couple of times. And he does the right thing, and it turns out that there are 10 guys wrestling. There are 10 matches throughout the night, and what one guy can do in one or two situations literally means the difference between winning and losing.
As a team.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, it's a razor thin line between winning and losing those dual meets. I mean, I would have never thought John Boris would have lost against UVA.
Yeah.
That's one that I kind of had penciled in for us, but he did. So you've got, like I said, I mean, you've got to find a way to win those matches. And if we're gonna have success and we're gonna beat NC State and Pittsburgh, those are the things that we have to accomplish in those matches. We need guys to step up, and we need to win those tight matches.
We'll talk about the AC slate here in just a moment. I want to just finish up with the non-conference part, though. Just a little bit, talking a little bit more about Northwestern and that duel at English Field at Atlantic Union Bank Park, the mat on the mound, the first time you guys have done that, and nearly 3,000 people show up for that duel. And
so was that in November? That was early November, right?
November 10th.
Yeah, second week of November.
So I remember the weather was a little sketchy. When you schedule that, you worry. Turned out to be great. It was sunny.
It was in the 60s, I want to say. It was beautiful.
In the early part of the meet, when I was sitting in the sun, it was kind of hot. So I had this question for you, and did the mat get hot? Because the sun was out.
Yeah, it actually did. We were concerned about that for a period of time. When we scheduled that, obviously we had no idea if the weather would cooperate, and it was a home run, right? I mean, the weather couldn't have been better.
Home run, get it
for what we were asked for. Yeah, exactly. So it was fantastic. Initially, we were worried that it was going to be too cold. The mat might be hard, and then as the forecast progressed and we did a trial run the day before and we took the mat out and we had the heat gun on the mat, and in the maroon portions of the mat, it was upwards of 85 to 90 degrees.
Okay.
But that being said, with the breeze, it wasn't an issue at all. It really was perfect. We had we built the platform to put underneath the mat, so there was some stability. And really, a lot of credit for that whole event goes to our support staff, our marketing, our facilities people for putting that thing together for us. Yeah, it was fantastic. The weather was great. I actually had to call my wife and have her bring some sunscreen out for me so I didn't get sunburned.
For the head, right?
Yeah.
Is that something you think you'll do again in the future?
I'm starting to work on next year's schedule, and we'll see how it plays out. We've got to have kind of a marquee home match early in the season when the weather could cooperate. The season kind of gets pushed back this year a little bit because our Hokie Open is November 8th, so possibly looking at doing something maybe on November 7th if we can get maybe Ohio State or somebody like that to come down and is willing to do it one of those first weekends in November. So it's kind of wait and see. We'll see how things play out, but obviously if it does work out, it's something we'll strongly consider.
And it was just a really cool spectacle. And one thing I didn't realize till afterwards, I went back and watched it, was when Mitch Moore had his pin, his celebration was fantastic.
Yeah.
He got up and swung for the fences, and it was just it was just a great overall event.
He'd planned on that. He was planning that ahead of time.
Probably.
Yeah, had that in the back of his mind. So let's talk a little bit about the ACC slate here moving forward. I know this is a question that we talk about a lot. You get a lot, whether it was Packer and Durham, but this ACC just continues to get better and better. I remember talking about it 2 years ago, and then last year, and then this year. You've got so many teams in the top 10. Just looking at where this conference was 5-6 years ago to now, just your thoughts on where this conference is and where it matches up really in the entire country.
Yeah, I think we're obviously have established ourselves as the second best conference in the country. The Big Ten is great, but I think if you look at what we have with only 6 schools and with the success that we're having, NC State, UNC, and Pitt in particular, there's the high end is really good in our conference, and there's really not a lot of fluff in the conference. So, to me, when I look at the rosters of a lot of the teams, there's not a lot of seniors. I mean, I think if you look at what those 4 teams that I mentioned have coming back, they're all going to be better next year, including us. With getting Makai Lewis back in the fold, and some of these guys we have coming off a red shirt, and so that's exciting. But yeah, it's the conference has steadily improved in the 14 years that I've been involved in the ACC, and I think the biggest growth that we've seen here is in the last couple of years, because now we're seeing the likes of UNC and Pitt getting significantly better. So that just adds so much to it, and I think it's just going to continue to grow and can continue to improve, and it's really a good thing. I mean, it's much more competitive than it's ever been, but I think it's going to make all the teams, it's going to enhance recruiting. It's going to enhance a lot of things.
Yeah.
When you go out recruiting, do conversations about the ACC network come up? Is that something that recruits care about, that the ACC now has a network that some of these meets will be on?
I mean, I wouldn't say it's an issue, but it's something that we try to highlight and that we talk about. And I do think it's something kids, these kids that we're competing with Big Ten schools, they want to, number one, know that they can go and wrestle in front of a lot of people, right? So, for us to be able to routinely put 3,000-4,000 people at our matches is a big deal. And then to have the ability to wrestle on TV, yeah, I mean, that's I think what every high caliber recruit is kind of plays into their decision making at least a little bit.
Streaming is such a big thing now. If you talked about being on TV 10, 12, 15 years ago, it was a big deal. But if you really want to, like if you got a wrestler's family and they want to see, they'll either be able to watch it on the ACC network or stream it most of the time.
Yeah. And then, the ACC Network this year in its first year, the Friday night duels that they're doing for I think a 5-week stretch, 6-week stretch. Seems like that's been great exposure for what's started and what's going to continue here the next couple of weeks on the ACC Network.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, we'll be on the ACC Network and hopefully redeem ourselves next Friday night in Raleigh at NC State.
Yep. So the Hokies have Duke this weekend. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. Then at NC State, at Pittsburgh to close out the regular season before ACC's. Let's talk a little bit about the big event this weekend in Moss Arts Center. You guys welcome in Duke. It's your final home duel of the season, which is kind of hard to believe. It feels like it just got going yesterday with Missouri. I want to ask you this though about the mat on the mount, not the mat on the mount. Excuse me, the Moss Arts Center. How was that first pitched to you? Was that an idea that you came up with? And when you first heard about it, were you skeptical at all? And your initial thoughts when you first heard about wrestling in Moss Arts Center?
We've been doing this for, I don't even know how many years it is now, but we started when Coach Dresser was here. Yeah. And really the way it came about is at that time, our sports information director, BJ Johnston, I don't know if you guys remember.
Yeah, I remember.
You may remember BJ. His wife worked at the Moss Arts Center. Okay. So they were, they were trying to bring business into the Moss Arts Center. And he came to Coach Dresser with the idea. And Kevin obviously is, he's a guy that's all about promotion and doing unique things. So kind of ran with it from there. And it was so successful. And there was such a demand for it. And it was one of the things that, people are always asking me when the schedule comes out or the year before, who are we wrestling? When's the Moss Arts Center? Trying to plan their trip back to Blacksburg around the event at the Moss Arts Center. So it's been a huge success. We've tried to add one or two little things, wrinkles to it from a production standpoint, a marketing standpoint every year to enhance it for our fans. And I think we've been really successful doing that. And it's, it's already sold out. So, it's something we'll continue to do. It's something that's been a great success for Virginia Tech wrestling.
Well, you got to go to it last year. And last year was my first year getting the chance to call it. It is just such a unique event. It is so loud. It is just so much fun to be a part of.
Yeah, it's I set up and there's the floor and then there's the mezzanine and the balcony, and I don't remember which is which. I think the mezzanine is probably in the middle, and I was in the balcony all the way up top, I think in the front row. So it's just a really good. You get a perspective on angles and things like that you might not get sitting in Castle, depending upon where you sit in Castle. And this is true really of anywhere you sit. But if I remember correctly, they also had the video board in the back. So it's one thing to look at the wrestlers on the floor and another to be able to see the detail on the video board. And they bring out, I think, high techs and cheerleaders. Yeah. And, it's just a cool event. And it sold out, I think, literally in the last few days. They sold the last few tickets. So that's great. And when we were helping you guys promote it, we were running ads for you in Tech Sideline. The way I put it out on Twitter was I said, if you've never been to this, it's a neat, unique event. If you've never been to it, grab yourself a ticket and go. So it's good that they've got it sold out again this year.
And it's the venue itself it's just an incredible venue.
Yeah.
And obviously wrestling in there is very unique. And in my opinion, it's the most unique venue in college wrestling. The pictures that are produced from that thing are just unbelievable.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're fortunate. I mean, it's different. When it's loud, it's really loud, but then when it's quiet, it's very, very quiet in there. So you kind of have to be careful what you say on the bench a little bit.
That's true.
So, but no, it's been a success for us. I know our guys love wrestling over there. It's something they get excited about, and we've had a lot of success wrestling there as well.
It was really cool last year after they wrestled at Moss Arts Center was that Darren Ravel actually tweeted about it. He formerly of ESPN. He was their business guru, but he has over 1 million followers on Twitter and was tweeting about how cool the venue was, and so that was really unique.
That's funny that you say that about having to watch your language, because those things are designed to where whatever you say on that stage will carry up into the stands.
Again, so you guys have Duke this weekend, and I know you don't want to look too far ahead, but definitely a 3-week stretch coming up that's going to be very important with Duke, and then at NC State and at Pittsburgh. It's going to be a fun 3 weeks, but challenging, I'm sure, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Looking ahead to to NC State and Pittsburgh, those dual meets to me are very similar to UNC, and a lot of it's about matchups in our sport. Is how do you match up with other teams, and for us, they're both going to be great dual meets because there's going to be a lot of matches that are going to come down to 1 or 2 points. They're going to be really, really tight, really close. Looking at NC State at 184, Hunter Bolin, who's ranked second in the country, will match up with Trent Hidley, who's ranked third in the country. David McFadden's got one of the Bowler brothers, who's had a lot of success, is a very good wrestler. So, those matchups are going to be critical in determining the outcome of that match. So, I think when you look at it, there's very few matches that are going to be that have a chance of being major decisions or that are going to be not that competitive. So, and then you look at the same thing against Pitt too. So that's the beauty of the ACC right now. And if you're an ACC wrestling fan, I think it makes it really exciting to watch these dual meets. So, we're fired up about it. We're fired up to get down to Raleigh and compete and obviously get through Duke first this weekend at the Moss Arts Center, but closing this season out the right way and feeling good about it.
Absolutely. We've got Coach Tony Robie joining us here, a special edition of the Tech Sideline Podcast, talking about the schedule. What I want to do now is transition and talk about some individual wrestlers, which I'm really excited to talk a little bit about Makai Lewis and his Olympic redshirt year, and we're going to do that on the other side of our timeout here on the Tech Sideline Podcast. When we come back, we talk about Makai Lewis, Hunter Bolin, David McFadden, and more right here on the Tech Sideline Podcast, proudly presented by the Fisher Law Firm. Welcome back into the Tech Sideline Podcast, episode 115. We're so glad you're with us. We've got Malcolm Stewart behind the scenes producing on our podcast set, our founder and general manager, Will Stewart. I'm your podcast host, Evan Hughes. We've got Virginia Tech head wrestling coach, Tony Robie. Coach, we're glad you're still with us. And what I want to do now is really just kind of dive in. One thing I love about researching your wrestlers is there's so many good stories about each of these guys, and they all have a story to share. And so kind of break them down and get your thoughts on what it's like to coach some of these guys. But before we talk about some of the guys in the lineup this year, would love to spend some time talking about Makai Lewis and Ty Walls right now and what they're up to, and Makai in his Olympic redshirt year. How has that been going for them so far? I know Makai is stationed in Blacksburg, right? That's his home base, so to speak. But how has the Olympic redshirt year been going for him, and how's Ty Walls doing as well?
It's going well. They're actually both out in Colorado Springs right now at the Olympic Training Center. I think they're spending 10 days out there preparing for the Olympic team trials, which are early April in State College at Penn State. So I think it's been really successful. The senior nationals, formerly called the U.S. Open, Makai was second there. Ty was third. Makai got to the finals, and I really lost to a guy that he had beaten previously. And freestyle's a different animal than folk style a little bit. He gave up one 4-point move on the edge of the mat and kind of determined the outcome of the match. But I know a lot of our fans aren't used to seeing Makai lose, and he's wrestled very, very well, but he has taken some losses. He went over to Dagestan, Russia, and placed fourth in a great event over there. He was second at the U.S. Open. He took fourth at the Bill Farrell in New York City. So this has been a great learning experience for Makai, and I think long term, this is really going to benefit Makai in his run to win world and Olympic medals, not only this year, but down the road. Sure. And I also think he's going to come back as an even better folk-style wrestler. So it's been, at times it's a little bit difficult. I know for Makai that he likes to be with the team. He truly likes, collegiate style or folk style wrestling more than he likes freestyle wrestling. So I know that he's excited to get back in and start wrestling for Virginia Tech again. So I think in that aspect, it's been a little bit challenging for Makai, and it's different. You don't compete every week in freestyle. I mean, there's long gaps in between your competitions. You can go 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks in between your competitions. So So it's different, especially for a young kid. Makai's 20 years old. So he's learning a lot through this process. I think he's had an opportunity to travel to some great places, in terms of wrestling, to be around some unbelievable competitors and learn from them, spend a lot of time at the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs. So, overall, been pleased with Makai, especially, I think, since the U.S. Open, just kind of watching his demeanor and his attitude and his approach to how he's doing things on a daily basis. So he's in a good place. I felt like Ty Walls at the U.S. Open competed as well as he's competed in a long time, especially domestically. He's almost had more success when he goes internationally than against some of the domestic guys, and I don't know if that's just because they know him and they know his style maybe a little bit more, but Ty's a pro. He's all in on his development and getting better at wrestling, just completely focusing on the process of improvement all the time. So it's great for our program too, because those guys go out to Colorado Springs, they're exposed to some of the best wrestlers and coaching in the world, and then they bring a lot of that back to our wrestling room at Virginia Tech and help our athletes with what they learn.
Yeah, and hearing what you're saying about Makai, I mean, I can only imagine, you're talking about the Olympics for years to come, but I mean, when he comes back to Virginia Tech too, just all of this experience, I mean, this has just got to be unbelievable for him.
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, I think Makai is he's improving, or he's made an effort to improve in some areas that I think he needed to improve in to continue to progress as a wrestler, and just generating some more of his own offense, working on his leg attacks, those kind of things. This year has been really good for him in that sense. So we're excited, obviously, to get Makai Lewis back in a Virginia Tech singlet next season. But I think it's been a good thing for Makai in his development.
So I sit here and think about a guy like Makai who won a national championship and now is being exposed to all this and learning even more and getting even better. How many of his contemporaries, and I'm talking in the same weight class, guys that he's going to see again in college wrestling when he comes back, how many of those guys are going through the same process and growing in the same ways?
I don't know that there's any direct competitors of Makai that I can think of. There's several really good wrestlers that are taking Olympic red shirts this year. So it's kind of a weird year in Division I wrestling, because there are so many guys like my national champs or guys that are national champion caliber wrestlers that are taking Olympic red shirt. Michigan's got, I think, 3 guys, that have the ability to win national titles. They're Olympic red shirt, and Cornell's Olympic red shirting 3 guys. Oklahoma State's Olympic red shirting Dayton Fix, who's, got the ability to win the NCAA. So, in that sense, yes, there are several guys that are experiencing the same things. A lot of those guys are at different weight classes and aren't direct competitors of Makai at this particular point.
So it's not like there's 5 or 6 other guys in his weight class who are going through the same.
He's really the only one that still has NCAA eligibility.
Nice.
Yeah. Is Yanni Diakmahalis, is he Olympic red shirt this year?
Yes. Yep.
Gotcha. So that's great to hear about Makai and Ty. Thanks for taking some time and updating everyone. It was cool to see him. He was at the North Carolina duel, I believe. He came over to the broadcast table, and it's just really cool to see him interact with the fans. And he came over during Boland's weight class versus UNC and was on for the entire weight class, and he got up, and as soon as he got up, the fans right behind the broadcast table, 3 of them, "Can we get your selfie, Makai? Do you mind taking a picture?" I mean, he really is a celebrity here in Blacksburg, and he could not be any nicer and more humble about it, to be totally honest.
Is he getting more comfortable with that celebrity status? Because he's a pretty quiet guy.
He is. Yeah, he is. I mean, he's still a quiet guy, and I don't think he loves it or would choose it, but he's accepted that that's part of, it's just part of the deal for him at this point, and he's going to have to do things. And to his credit, he's very open to doing things that maybe he's not super comfortable with, and that's the only way you grow and get better at those things. And I think he's grown a lot in those areas, and he's gotten a lot better at getting up and talking in front of people and doing interviews. And so he, whether he wants to be or not, he's the face of Virginia Tech wrestling, and it's something that he's going to have to continue to deal with. But like I said, he's always very accommodating. He's an incredibly humble guy. You very rarely will ever hear him say anything about himself, in an arrogant way or in a bragging way. He's just all about business and coming in and doing work. And, I think he really just loves the competition side of what he does. And he's he's that kind of person. I mean, he loves to compete. He loves to win. And he's willing to do the work necessary to do that.
Yeah. One of my favorite podcasts we've ever done in our 115 episodes was when we got to sit down with you and Makai, 2 days after his national championship. And
I just remember he had the hat on, and we had just started doing video. And I was like, Makai, can you do the show without the hat? And he took the hat off at first, and he's like, "No, I gotta have the hat on," because
he's very particular about his hair. He's very particular about his hair. So I think that probably had more to do with it than anything.
The dude shy. Okay.
Yeah. So let's transition. I want to talk about a couple of wrestlers, and I really want to spend some time as well talking about the season that Hunter Boland's having for you guys. He's 21-1. He's ranked number 2 in the country in just about every poll. What has he done this season to make him one of the best in his weight class in the entire country?
I think the transition from Hunter's freshman year, redshirt year to this year has just been his overall commitment to wrestling. And I think not that he wasn't committed as a freshman. I mean, Hunter Boland's as tough as they come. His work ethic is fantastic. But I think wrestling has just become a much larger part of his life. And it's something that he is with him all the time. And I don't know, as a freshman, I think he came in and he worked his butt off when he was there, but I don't know how much thought he was putting into wrestling outside of those hours we were, in Castle Coliseum in the wrestling room. So the biggest change for Hunter, in a big part of his success, has just been the 100% commitment to what it takes to be successful at the sport, and that's the mental side of things. That's the lifestyle side of things in terms of getting an adequate amount of rest. I mean, Hunter, he loves to hunt and fish, and he has his own landscaping business that he
Really?
that he does in the off season. So he's which is great, but at the same time, that's not always conducive to what's best for the sport of wrestling.
Sure.
So I think that he's really narrowed his focus a lot to really focus on the sport of wrestling, and he's just done a great job developing his wrestling skills too. When I watched Hunter in high school, I was fortunate. I've been able to be around Hunter since he was really in middle school and started
He's from
wrestling.
Christiansburg,
He's a
right?
Christiansburg kid.
Christiansburg Cowboy, right? That's his name.
Yeah, so he's actually from Floyd.
Okay.
And they moved to Christiansburg, so he'd go to Christiansburg High School. But, I've been around Hunter for a long, long time, know his family really well. And I think the biggest difference in his wrestling now in his freshman year is he's just he's developed his leg attacks a lot better. His top game has gotten much better, and he's in turn scoring a lot more points than he did his freshman year. He kind of he had to win on toughness and will and desire a lot his freshman year, and now he can go out and put up a bunch of points. And he's not just beating guys; he's majoring a lot of guys.
You look across the boards. I mean, you're right, majoring a lot of guys, putting up a lot of points, and his lone loss came at Cliff Keen, and he avenged that in the third place match.
Right. Yep.
So, and we talked about that, and kind of worth bringing it up because I love that conversation we had in early December when he went out to the Cliff Keen at 184. You told me one thing that stuck with me was how that was almost like a mini NCAA tournament itself, how it kind of replicated with so much talent in his weight class there.
Which segues into a question I have for you. Where do you see him being seated when the NCAA's? Or do you have a feel for that?
He still has. There's still so much in front of him right now with the competition that he's going to see. So, if he wins out, he'll probably be the second seed. I don't think there's any question about that. I would be shocked if he wasn't, assuming that the guy from Arizona State, who's two-time defending NCAA champion, wins out as well. But
so he's at least a junior, right? The Arizona State guy.
Oh, he's a senior.
Good. Okay.
So, but so that I don't know. I'm not overly concerned about that, but that's kind of where he's at. But we have to just focus on taking care of business. At NC State, at Pitt, and then at the ACC.
Well, and from a national standpoint, Hunter, I probably shouldn't say this, but Hunter's got plenty of time. He's just a redshirt sophomore, so.
Time is always now, though, Will.
Well, right. That's true because you never know what's going to happen.
Right.
But if things go well, he will have more than one opportunity. But Dan Marino will tell you, sometimes you're young and you're there on that big stage and and you think you're coming back, and it never happens again. So
the Dolphins fan of Will Stewart coming out, Dan Marino.
Yes, sir. That's my sophomore year in college, and I thought the Dolphins would be playing plenty of Super Bowls after that, but no.
Would love to spend some time talking about Bryce Andonian too at 149, and was in the middle of his redshirt season. Was off to a great start, and he starts against Chattanooga. He knocked off a guy who actually was an NCAA tournament qualifier in his first start of the dual season. What gave you and your coaching staff the confidence to put him into the lineup, and what has he shown you since he's had that start against Chattanooga?
Well, we knew Bryce was incredibly talented, and I felt like Bryce is one of those guys that I don't know. I think a red shirting is great for some kids, but I felt like for Bryce, just being in the thick of things is better for him and his personality, and I think it's gonna. I think long term, it's going to help him. Short term, that remains to be seen. But I do think long term, it's the best decision for him. Bryce needs to be in the fire. He's a competitor. That's the kind of kid he is. So, we knew talent wise, and still Bryce's talent is off the charts. He needs to be consistent. The one area that he struggled, he looked great Friday night against UVA, and then came back on Sunday and quite frankly didn't wrestle very well. And I think lost to a guy that he's capable of beating for sure. So it was a little disappointing in that. And I guess that's part of being a freshman. I mean, I've said this before. He turned 18 in August, so he's a really young kid, and if you look at him, he looks young and he's immature. So there's going to be some growing pains with that. But for him, he's got all kinds of offense. He can score a lot of points. Defensively, he needs to continue to work and improve and get better. And there's a couple positions right now that are really hurting him, and they're determining the outcome of the match. But he's fun to watch, and the potential is off the charts, and the ability is exciting.
Yeah.
Do you recall where he was ranked coming out of high school?
He was ranked high. I mean,
he was very high.
Yeah,
he's out of Ohio, right?
Top 20. He's like 23rd overall.
Kirtland, Ohio, if memory serves correct.
Yeah, he went to St. Ed.
Yep, and that's the same school as who was
Ty Walls.
Yep.
Yep, and Cody Howard. So
Cody Howard. I had class with Cody Howard. Nice guy. And one more here before we do have some questions here we're going to close up the podcast with that were submitted before the podcast starts. One guy, I think you said this at the beginning, and he really is a fan favorite, is BC LaPrade. It just seems like just the way he goes about himself on social media, and he has fun with the mullet. And what's he like to coach, a guy like BC LaPrade, having him in the wrestling room?
Interesting. He's an interesting guy to coach. Now, BC, I love BC. I'm probably, from a relationship standpoint, me and BC are pretty close, and we've been through some ups and downs. So
Sure.
BC is a strong-willed guy. For sure, he's bullheaded, and we've butted heads a lot over the years, and but it's been fun to watch him grow and mature and really starting to develop, and I'm excited about BC LaPrade. He lost a tough match at Old Dominion, but the one thing about BC is I always feel good about his fight and his effort for the most part. There's only a handful of matches where I can think of where I was disappointed with the effort that he gave when he went out there. He's a tough guy. He can perform well when he's when he gets himself, we call getting yourself in the red, and he gets tired. He's usually at his best when he gets in those kind of matches that are both guys are winded, and he gets into a war is when he does his best wrestling, when he stands around and he tries to make it who's a slicker wrestler with more technical skills. That doesn't really benefit him. So from a style standpoint, it's similar to my style of wrestling when I was in college, so I think we have a bond there, and I'm excited to see how he can finish this. I really think BC can accomplish some really good things for us.
What year is he?
He's in his fourth year. Yeah, so he's graduating. He's actually going to go through senior night on Saturday, but he's likely going to come back and finish his fifth year, and just trying to figure out what his degree is going to be and in which direction he wants to go academically.
Good for him. Okay, all right. Let's transition now, Coach UK, with a couple questions here.
Certainly,
We put it on our wrestling boards, which I tell you what, we have some big time Virginia Tech wrestling fans on the Tech Sideline wrestling board. As I see a smile,
and
over
occasionally
from
the
Will.
newbies wander over and learn a few things as well. Guys like me.
You want to do the questions, Will?
I will do them. So message board poster upper quad. I think we've asked you this before. I don't quite recall, though. What's the future of ACC wrestling? Are there any growth plans? Are there any current members that you think might add the sport? Can schools be added for wrestling only? That's also a possibility. As far as adding the sport of wrestling, when it comes to Title IX considerations, I just don't think that's likely to happen for a school to add a men's sport.
It tends in today's climate, it's certainly it's something that's hard to be overly optimistic about.
Because they generally have to add a women's sport at the same
correct.
time.
Yeah.
Right. So
hopefully, my hope is that this ACC network could possibly help in just a lot of people getting excited about wrestling and seeing the following that it can create, maybe for some of these other institutions. But you're right. I mean, it's a difficult thing. There's a lot of wrestling programs being added at the lower levels, the NAIA, the Division III, even Division II in some cases. And a lot of those are enrollment-driven schools. So they start wrestling and they get 30, 40, 50 more students. At Roanoke College just announced that they're going to add wrestling. So there's a lot of growth in wrestling at the lower levels. But in terms of Division I, yeah, I mean, it's since a Power 5 Division I school has added the sport of wrestling, it's been a long time.
Been a while. Yeah. All right, next one is pylons.
Is that actually his name? Just pylons?
Pylons.
Okay, that works.
Yeah. What are the possibilities at 165 and 174 next year? So kind of break that down for us. And specifically, is there any chance that Makai joins the 174 weight class?
It's something that we've discussed as a staff. I think there's a chance that Makai could go up. It's hard. I do think he'll be a 74-pounder eventually. But it's hard to predict. Makai, when he's not training, he gets pretty big, pretty fast. And it's not always great weight, but he gets up to 185 real easy. But when he gets in training mode and he's being disciplined with what he's putting in his body and his nutrition and drinking a lot of water, he typically can get down to weight relatively easy. I anticipate Makai will have at least one more year at 165. And then beyond that, I think there's 2 years from now, maybe a chance that he could possibly move up. So, I mean, right now, when we're kind of putting our lineup on paper and making some projections, we probably see Makai at 165 at least for one more year.
Okay. All right. So let's give. I like this question, so we'll give Upper Quad another shot. His second question: will Borst be a 197 or heavyweight next year?
It's a good question. I think he could go either way. We'll kind of have to see how things shake out and, maybe what's the best for the team. John, on a heavy day, weighs about 230. On a light day, he weighs about 220, and a low 222, 223, something like that. So he certainly could go back down to 97. I personally think that heavyweight's a good place for him, though. I think he's a better athlete than most of the heavyweights that he wrestles. I don't think the size puts him at a huge disadvantage that often. I think he actually sometimes does better against some of the bigger guys because he just moves so well.
Right.
But yeah, I anticipate John will probably be at heavyweight next year is my guess. But it's certainly something that could be on the table.
All right, VT Dante, how are the red shirts progressing? So talk about guys that aren't necessarily visible. How's that going?
Well, I know a lot of people want an update on Connor Brady, who's a blue chip guy that hasn't wrestled a little bit early for us, and he has an injury that he's coming back from. He won't compete till next year.
Wow.
But we're excited about Connor. From what we saw from Connor before the injury, sidelined him. He's got a chance to be really good for us. He had some success in some open tournaments, lost to some older guys that are pretty good, in some tight matches. But he's, I think, somebody that's going to be a contributor next year for us and is going to be really good. The guy that we're probably most excited about based on his redshirt year is Sam Latona at 125. I mean, Sam's had an outstanding freshman campaign. He's won a bunch of open tournaments. Most recently, he won the App State Open. He wrestled in the Southern Scuffle right around New Year's, and ended up placing third at the Southern Scuffle, and that's one of the better tournaments throughout the course of the regular season. Lost a match to a kid named Nick Piccanini from Oklahoma State, who's a two-time All-American, ranked third or fourth in the country, and quite honestly, easily probably should have went to overtime in that match. So, he's gotten better as the years went along too. He's now starting to widen the gap against guys he wrestled earlier in the season, and is getting major decisions. And somebody who I think has got a chance to be really good. He's got the right mentality. He's got a huge motor. He goes out and attacks and wrestles a style of wrestling that is conducive to success at the NCAA tournament, and is conducive to being, I think, a guy that can be a 4-time All-American for us. I think he's really good. So, those are the two guys that, kind of stand out, and obviously having Makai back. Yeah. And Corbin Myers is also Corbin's in his 5th year, but he's eligible to apply for a 6 year of eligibility, and the plan with Corbin is to apply for. You can't apply for that until after the season, and right. I think he's got a very good. You never know. The NCAA will make that determination, but I think he's got a very good chance at getting a 6 year and being back with us next year.
And where does he come in? Is he at 133?
He's 133.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's an answer that Ron VPI, a question that Ron VPI wanted answered. So discussing the red shirts, let's go one class further back. So Casey Dale wants to know, congrats on the number 2 recruiting class in the country, and kind of a long question, but there's a similar vein through it. Does the staff anticipate redshirting everyone, or could you see one or more of them coming in and contributing as a starter? If yes, which ones can you see starting as true freshmen? That's a difficult to project, but take a shot at it.
Yeah, I think 174 is a weight class where you could see a true freshman starting for us next year.
Yeah.
Other than that, hard to say, right? It's hard to say, because all these guys, you just don't know if they're ready yet either right now, because we haven't been around them. They're still in high school. I mean, they're doing incredible things at the high school level. But you get to college, and it's a whole different ballgame. So,
and that's true of all sports. You never know how kids are going to react when they take that step up to the next level. And I know you've seen this in wrestling. You've seen guys that had a lot of promise that they get into. I consider wrestling to be either the most difficult collegiate sport or one of the most difficult to participate in.
It's the most difficult
because of the demands. And there are guys that just can't make the jump.
And you never know. Recruiting is a funny game, and there's kids that you think are going to be great, and on paper they're great, and sometimes they don't ever reach their full potential. And then there's guys that kind of come out of nowhere that you would have never predicted were going to have that level of success, and they end up doing great things for you. So, I mean, Jared Hott is a guy I talk about all the time who wasn't a highly touted recruit and was a 3-time All-American, was second in the country for us. So a lot of their success once they get to college, is going to be determined by their commitment, their desire, their work ethic. How important is wrestling to them at that particular point in their lives, and are they willing to commit everything that's necessary to be successful? So, I mean, that's what's exciting about a guy like Sam Latona, is because, I mean, he's, out of that freshman class, he was probably one of the lower ranked guys, but it's just so darn important to him, and he wants to win so bad, and he just lives it, and he, his commitment to it every day, that's going to help you accomplish a lot of great things.
So we've sat here and we've talked about some of the guys that are already in the program. You've got some really promising guys, redshirt sophomores. Makai is going to be still relatively young eligibility-wise when he comes back. It sounds like you're building a pretty good foundation for the coming years.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I feel like when I look at next year, I feel really good about what we'll have next year. Yeah. I just know I know what we have in our room right now that's not in our lineup, and and listen, we've got a lot of really good guys coming back too,
right?
That I think but when you can add that kind of depth, you can have one or two more really good guys, and I mean, it's just, if you look at dual meets, you throw a couple more good guys in there, you're going to win a heck of a lot more dual meets. And I feel great about where the future of our program is with some of the young guys that we have. in the lineup. I'm really excited about next year and I think what we'll have. But there's a lot of ground to cover between now and then, and we've got to stay healthy, and guys have to continue to improve, and it's exciting times.
So we got 2 more questions. We'll ask the downer question first, and then finish on a better question. So let me read this one. I don't know how to pronounce this username. NAF. Oh, it's Hokie Fan backwards. So Hokie Fan backwards wants to know how did the coaching staff and the wrestlers handle post UNC, the loss to UNC, because you'd won every duel up till then, right, including some big ones.
Yeah, it was. Listen, it was disappointing. I mean, it was as disappointing of a performance that I can remember that we've had. And then obviously it's magnified by the fact that there was 4,300 people there. It was on national TV. It was, for me as a coach, we missed an opportunity to to kind of continue to raise the profile of Virginia Tech wrestling. And credit to UNC, they were ready. We weren't. And there's reasons that you can probably point to that didn't help us, but I've never really been in the business of making excuses, and we just didn't get it done, bottom line. But in terms of how we reacted, to me, this could hopefully be the best thing that happened to us if we use it the right way, and it brings us together, and I think it is a wake-up call for some of our guys, and there was probably some hurt feelings in that meeting after the UNC match, and we were very direct and blunt in terms of some of the changes that need to be made with certain individuals. So if they take that to heart and they make those changes, and I know in a couple cases I've seen a lot of progress, a lot of guys doing the right things, guys making changes since that match, and hopefully that's the case. But it was definitely something that we were disappointed in for sure.
So in a scenario like that where you're talking to individual wrestlers and telling them where they need to improve and what they could have done better, is that a conversation that occurred in front of the whole team, or are these one-on-one?
We typically meet. We meet the 10 starters and the coaches meet after the match, and we talk about it.
All right.
So it's a lot of it's in front of their peers. It's we lay it all out there.
It's such an interesting sport because it's so individual, but yet what you do, as we talked about earlier, affects the team. What you do in any given moment in your match could mean the difference between the team winning and losing.
Sure. And that being said, with UNC, I think we did a really good job of just, like I said, with Dave McFadden, we talked about it. We were honest about it. It was, we didn't sugarcoat it, but then we moved on the next day. Right. And we always talk about starting back at even every week. And, we started back at even and got back to work. And, there's once it's over, it's over. All you can do is learn from it. And at that point, there's nothing we could do. So we have to take the good from it and then move forward. And hopefully it helps us down the road.
Okay, last question. WASRIS, Wasriz. Don't know where that comes from, but he's been on our boards a long time. Potential for new regional training center staff additions after the season. And I would kind of like to broaden that to just kind of ask how things are going with the SERTC fundraising. How's that going this year? And just talk about are you growing and what are your plans for it?
Yeah, no, the fundraising for the SERTC has really gone great. Really since I've taken over, I feel like, and it was trending that way even before that. But we've got a lot of people behind us. Our numbers are good. We've got a lot of people that are supporting it. I think what we're doing on Tech Sidelines, it helps us a lot, and it raises the awareness of what the Southeast Regional Training Center is and why it's important. So, we can always, when you look at what some of these regional training centers, the money they're raising, it's a necessity, and we need to continue to grow that and improve in that area. But I'm comfortable and confident with the direction we're going from that standpoint. As far as bringing guys in, David McFadden's a a fifth-year senior. He has aspirations to wrestle internationally freestyle. There's probably a very good chance that David McFadden will stick around and be part of our regional training center. I'd like to bring in at least one other guy, but to me, and I've said this before, I really like the idea of building the training center primarily with Virginia Tech guys, with our athletes and people that understand our system and that we know intimately and we know well and we know that are going to be positive to the culture and the environment that we have at Virginia Tech. So we're always on the lookout to bring in the right kind of guys, and we've been in communication with one guy outside of our program that's a possibility for us. We'll see how that plays out. It's hard to say, but we've also talked about maybe bringing in an RTC coach that specifically just coaches our RTC athletes. Yeah. So that's something that is a possibility for us as well.
All right. So to donate to the Southeast Regional Training Center, give us the rundown on how you do that.
Well, first of all, it's a 501c3, so the donations are tax deductible. If you want more information on the Southeast Regional Training Center, you can go to southeastrtc.com. We've got videos on there that kind of tell you exactly what it is, why it's important. You can also contact me at any point to learn more about the Southeast Regional Training Center. But you can just go to the website. Again, that's southeastrtc.com, and you can give online. You can donate monthly. You can do a one-time donation. If you're going to send a real big check, send it in the mail so we don't have to pay the credit card fees on it.
Right. That 3% adds
a great
up.
point.
So anyways, all the details are on there, and also, if people are interested in learning more, feel free to contact me. I'm the director of the Southeast Regional Training Center, and, anytime we have an opportunity to promote it, to talk about it, to educate people on it and the importance of it, we try to take advantage of that.
So, and something else I think would help people is if you Google, we did an article on it years ago saying what it is, what it does, what it means to the program, and that's what they call evergreen content. That is always true. So just Google Southeast Regional Training Center Tech Sideline, and that'll bring up an article for you that you can read and understand what they do at the Southeast Regional Training Center and what it means to the program.
Awesome. Well, that's all the questions, right?
That is it.
Thank you to everybody for jumping on the boards and asking some questions. Coach, we're just over an hour, and I know on a busy week like it is this week with Duke coming into town, thank you so much for taking some time spending with us here at the Tech Sideline Podcast. This was great. Will and I have been looking forward to doing this for last month or so. So thank you so much for coming on, and Hokie Nation is behind you, and they're looking forward to supporting you on Saturday.
Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
All right. Will, any final thoughts?
Nope, just good luck against Duke and good luck for the rest of the season. And I'm starting to get amped up.
I am too.
Yeah, I can't wait to see the match at NC State. You said that's going to be on the ACC network, right?
Yes,
correct.
Yep.
Cool.
Yep.
So I'm one of those guys that likes to watch his linear channel. I can stream, but I prefer to be able to tune into it with the remote. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, personally, I'm looking forward to this Saturday. Looking forward to being on the call for the final home duel of the season for Virginia Tech.
So you're going to be doing play-by-play for that?
I will. Yeah,
excellent.
I'm looking forward to it. So looking forward to seeing the Moss Arts Center and looking forward to being behind Coach Robie and the team the rest of the way here. So that'll do it for episode 115 of the Tech Sideline Podcast.
CXV.
Yep. Just show your ring. Where you got? Yeah, there you go. For those who listen to the podcast, we'll be back Monday morning, 9:30. Chris Coleman will be back. We'll be talking about Virginia Tech men's basketball, the signing day period for football, all that and more coming up on Monday. Again, that'll do it. Episode 115 of the Tech Sideline Podcast. For the best producer in the land, Malcolm Stewart, behind the scenes producing on the podcast set, our founder and general manager, Will Stewart. Virginia Tech wrestling coach Tony Robie. I'm Evan Hughes, your podcast host, saying so long. Thanks so much for listening and watching. This has been episode 115 of the Tech Sideline Podcast, brought to you by the Fisher Law Firm.